Ron did his academic work at Princeton, Stanford, and Harvard Med School, and working at Affymetrix.
I used to work at Affymetrix.
Okay.
Yes.
And so he's going to talk to us a little bit about his new work here with Wild Earth, and beyond that, we'll get going.
All right. Thanks, Dave. All right. Great. I will get started. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I was talking to Lisa Rich. I was saying I have several lives. I'm going to try to go through several of them right now. Basically, to me, what's happening right now is that this room represents one of the facets of a Manhattan Project for climate change. Not only do we have to do things differently, we have to change the literal rules by which all of these things help us to eat and live and maintain the lifestyle that the public demands. It's a huge technical problem, and only really technology can change that, because technology changes the rules, changes economic rules of production. It changes the amount of energy you can get from a certain mass of substance. All of these things are necessary, and I'm going to provide a slightly different perspective from my most recent career and my current career. And we're going to talk a little bit about the biotechnology side of things. Both Maureen and I will. From my perspective in biotechnology, the reason why it is becoming more and more relevant is because the rules of biotech have been changing. And that's kind of a common theme during lunch. But basically, three interesting trends about biotechnology since 2005 or so is that there have been a tremendous amount of labor available. The number of PhDs in this country doubles every 10 years. And the market was saturated in 2000 when I graduated from graduate school. And it continues to become more and more oversaturated. PhDs are plentiful. They are not cheap, but they're available. Biodata prices are dropping. What you could get for $1 now used to cost thousands of dollars or entire PhDs. And the capital costs for doing business have gone down, something that not everybody is aware of, but creating a biotechnology lab can cost as little as $10,000, depending on how you define biotechnology. Certainly something that's not popular knowledge, but certainly a lot cheaper than it was maybe even 15 years ago. In my earlier career, 5 years ago at the beginning of time, I was one of the people who put together IndieBio. I was in the early staff that ran it for the first 5 classes. We deployed about $15 million in capital in 70 companies. And we had a really good run. We had 50% full funding from all of our graduates. 70% of the graduates had some funding. The portfolio that we left has a current market capitalization over $600 million. All of this happened practically in the blink of an eye. This is all the past. What's happening in food? So I'm going to talk a little bit about my next adventure, which continues from IndieBio, which is food. Most of us know, but if you haven't known, in the past 120 years or so, the expectations of consumers have been very high because the cost of food has been dropping constantly, almost year over year, since about 1910 or 1920. The amount of food that you could buy and the proportion of your paycheck has gotten more and more cheap throughout the 20th century and has set consumers' habits and expectations about what they get. They are, in the 21st century, quite unreasonable, and that's going to create a huge demand and a certain amount of instability in lots of different systems. In consumer food, on the CPI, since 2000, that trend has changed. It's gone flat, and it's starting to rise. Even though this looks like a little blip in the end of that very long curve I gave you in the past slide, that little up dip there is about 10 years, and it continues to be the case for the past 8 years after this chart from The Economist shows. At the same time, in technology and biotechnology, academic research has peaked. The NIH doubled its budget for research and development under the Clinton administration, and what goes up has to come down. And even despite various different administrations, the target is that the NIH budget will continue to shrink by another 5% or so. 1 in 20 labs and 1 in 20 grants will disappear. tremendous amounts of pressure on academic research and all those PhDs being produced. We have a friend, Ethan Pearlstein, who labeled this trend the post-docalypse, because people would finish and they had nothing to do. That creates an opportunity. The opportunity, as you've seen on the stage today, is that there's a tremendous amount of cash sitting around looking to grow. And this cash has become very mission-focused and very purposeful, as this whole event shows you. The amount of venture capital investment that is available has gone up regularly and very much linearly since the mid-90s, with the exception of the dot-com boom there, that peak here on the left-hand side of the plot. The amount of investment continues to rise in the United States. It is being matched in China now. This last year, investment in dollars in China for startups surpassed that of the United States. So you can almost double this number just by looking at those two first markets. In food, change has come just as quickly. And so most of us in this room are only interested in feeding the fish. The room is very strongly focused on the B2B side, providing commodity to create the fish. But let us not forget that when our products are successful, when the businesses are really going very well, it's all going to table. And it's going to be the consumers that are going to drive all of our businesses, and they're going to mangle everything and change all our expectations. What's happening in food? So this is a picture of all the main clients for the Grocery Manufacturers Association, which is a lobbyist group in Washington. It is one of the most powerful lobbyist groups because it's one of the oldest in Washington. They've been going since, I don't know, the 40s or 50s. They can pass laws that make it illegal to disparage food manufacturing, and they have done so. They can get almost anything done. But 2 years ago, this happened. About $20 or $30 billion worth of revenue in terms of the companies who are clients for the GMA disappeared. Unilever disappeared, Nestle disappeared, Campbell Foods disappeared. They just simply stopped being members of the GMA. That is something that I would never expect to see. This is an amazing transformation. Why? What happened to them? They basically created a press announcement that their customers aren't interested in the GMA anymore. And they joined a small lobbyist in Oakland, California at the start of the year before called the Plant-Based Foods Manufacturers Association. The lesson about this is that these things will continue to drive consumer sentiment and your customers much more rapidly than you ever really thought. And it's going to affect all of our business in the 3 to 5 year range. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about, I'm missing a slide. We're going to talk a little bit about what motivated Wild Earth. Let's talk about food innovation very quickly. But if this is a side of beef, we're used to sort of thinking as a side of beef is getting cut up and distributed as cuts of meat. But what food innovation conventionally has done, and it works as well in aquaculture, I'm sure, is that whatever's left over still has to be sold. And so all the organs and bones and so forth, they'd be cut off, and they used to be given to dogs. But as digital cutting has become more and more of a process that's being integrated, as well as enzymatic sort of processing of the beef, less and less of this protein is actually going to dogs. So while the product has looked the same on the shelves, it has actually been changing drastically, where now all of these things that used to go to dog food no longer go. Even the bones themselves are now being boiled, and all of the protein that's in the bones is being turned into bone broth. This is a big enough market that all those last few grams of protein that were in the head of beef has now gone to human beings. What's left is not very much. And that's what's happened to dog food in the past 10 years. If you look at Chewy.com or walk into any nice grocery store and look at the dog food, you'll notice that a lot of people are paying $3 to $6 to even $9 a pound for their dog food on the retail side. 20 years ago, when we were all growing up, that would be $1 a pound. So dog food, because of quality, has experienced a 3,000 to 1,000% increase in food in pricing over 10 years. This is what I think of as innovation in food. It works really well and it's great, right? But Cutting the size of the toilet paper roll thinner saves a lot of money and keeps the prices down. But there's only so thin you can make a roll of toilet paper, right? The problem is that consumers now feel very differently about their food. This is happening with fish already, as we know, and will continue to drive all of our business. I'm going to skip over. So the beautiful thing that happens with small companies, as biotech companies become smaller and they become more mobile, is that the old model where all the companies, because of their risk, start to look the same, but just simply different deal sizes, now can become much more diverse. All right, I'm getting a card. So, I'm going to talk about some of the companies I've worked with. New Way Foods is also a plant-based shrimp company. They produce the first viable sort of shrimp product that has no seafood in it at all. We invested in Memphis Meats and Finless Foods in the earliest rounds. They were in our lab. We worked with them. These companies are amazing. 2 years after we made our first investment in the first lab-grown meat company, this chairman of Cargill went on Fox Business News and told us how happy he was to be making that investment. He's since been replaced by another man who also went out and sort of said, he basically said, if we could make beef without the animal, why wouldn't we? In public, he said that in public. So Wild Earth is tackling pet food. We are creating our own protein. It's more expensive than most of the protein you're making, but we think it's going to be very appealing to consumers. We feel that the market will eventually drive all these technologies, and that's sort of the different aspect of our story. And beyond that, we think that food will have to continue to mature. It'll become more and more biochemical, biological, as we learn to deal with the microbiome in our gut and all the biological processes that is processing the food to create health, right? So the expectations for food in the 21st century are, from our point of view, very different, and they're very biological. So that was my 15-minute talk. I'll be around at the dinners and around part of the afternoon if anybody has any questions, but I have like 5 minutes, is that right?
Yeah, why don't we take one or two questions
Yeah.
real quickly for Ron?
That was super fast. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Hi, Ron. I looked at your website, and I thought it was interesting that you were going to make nutritious dog treats out of mushrooms. Can you, or fungi, maybe?
They're
can you explain
fungi.
that?
They are fungi. And so our process is basically taking koji, or Aspergillus oryza, which is a host known to anybody who does fermentation in the room. It isn't economical as some of the other products going around, but it needs to be a human and dog grade protein. So we have other constraints in the market. Any other questions? I can just keep talking. I want to say that that some of the things that are going to happen over the next year is we're already seeing people very concerned about how the food actually interacts with the gut. They actually are, everybody's getting the microbiome. And the food, the expectation will be more like a bodybuilder. What we found is that some of the consumer markets that were driving some of these basically biotech foods that we funded were becoming quite consumer positive. When the consumer felt that it was actually going to be helping their health, people's ideas about GMO completely flipped over. And one of these first markets that we sort of realized this was bodybuilders. Bodybuilders, they want DNA all over the bottles that they buy because they want to build muscle mass. They have a goal, and that's the only reason they're buying that stuff. People are now concerned that their health is being compromised by their food. And when they understand that better, they will see performance in a different way, just like the bodybuilders did. That's an earlier insight as well.
Thank you very
All
much,
right.
Ron. Appreciate it.
Thank you.